Hello, friend, and welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Pot-cast by Blue Nose Trading. I'm your host, Tori Solis, and today I'm going to be talking with TC Staton, glaze wizard and ceramic artist at Cone Infinity. Crystalline glazes are so fascinating, and I was so thankful to get such a knowledgeable artist on this podcast to share some of what they know with us. Today we chatted about crystalline glazes, their chemistry, how firing cycles affect crystal growth, different ways to add crystals to a glaze, what it's like to get your ceramic supplies in Hawaii, and so much more. So let's get right to it. Alright, joining me today for the next episode of the Bonsai Pot-cast, I have an extra special guest. Today I have a crystalline glaze wizard with me today. I have TC Staton of Cone Infinity. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's 9 a.m. and sorry if you can hear a tractor in the background. I got some farm work going on.
Oh, no worries. I'm sure we get trains going through here, so that happens sometimes too. So I went through your Instagram and I looked at all your work. I've been following you for a while, and you've got some amazing glaze work, but I couldn't find much about you yourself. So do you want to just tell me a little about yourself and how you kind of got started in clay and glaze?
I've been doing clay ceramics since high school. I got into it my sophomore year, as most people do. I took a ceramics class, started off with wheel throwing. We had a raku constantly. Mm-hmm. Basically, we did raku once a week, and that was the start of it. And then I applied ceramics colleges, and I ended up going to the Rhode Island School of Design for ceramics. I wanted to go to Alfred, but my parents said it was too far away and desolate, so that I should try a year there first. And yeah, I ended up going to RISD, and afterwards I came back to work on the family grass farm and take that over. So I did that for a while, and I believe in 2016 I started really getting into glaze chemistry with CMW, Matt Cass. Yeah, I've been doing glaze chemistry since then.
That's awesome. I listened to their podcast for Flux Sake, of course, and then I started their beginning course that they have, and I have studied the John Britt book, and I know my way around making adjustments, but I would definitely say that I'm like maybe only level 2, and you're somewhere around like level 7 at least. Like, so for everybody listening, because this is kind of a little bit off for my podcast, what is a crystalline glaze?
Crystalline glaze is a glaze that, let's see how to explain it best. It's a glaze that has like a special glaze chemistry. It has below 0.35 alumina in the UMF, which is, it's the chemical makeup of a glaze. And when you have under 0.35 alumina and you have the right balance of alkaline earth, you can get it to crystallize. Usually it's going to be around 0.55. So like a zinc calcium would be 0.55 zinc, and the rest of it would be calcium. And then you get things to crystallize. You can actually do it with less. I've been finding some cool stuff out. So usually what you'll do is you'll start with like a base glaze, and then you'll put colorants into them so they'll color the crystals. But there's also the more, I guess, more chemistry intense way where you can get magnesium dominant glazes, you can get iron to crystallize, you can get cobalt to crystallize, which is what I specialize in. Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Man, I've only ever heard of getting zinc to crystallize. How cobalt to crystallize? Is that it's just chemistry, right?
It's just chemistry.
I mean, it'd be too hard to kind of explain on a base level, but like that's awesome.
Well, if you imagine that, you know, in a zinc crystalline glaze you have 0.55 zinc. Same thing in a cobalt crystalline, you have 0.55 cobalt. Likewise for calcium and iron. Anything that's an alkaline earth, you can get to crystallize.
That is so interesting. I need to go rethink my whole periodic table. So these glazes typically run. Do yours always run? Do you experience that, or do you have them to where they don't run?
You can get them to not run, but no run, no fun. It's very limited if you make them not run.
Okay.
A lot of it is like application. If you put the glaze on too thick, it's going to be more likely to run. You can make them not run, but you can't make all crystalline glazes not run.
So the catchers, they just catch the glaze that runs off and then you bonk them off?
Yeah, I'll bring a catcher over. Just last night, I fixed a big problem I was having with the crystalline glaze, with the, shiny one that I make, and now it's great. I'll bring over an example of a catcher. Okay, so this right here is a cup with a catcher on it, and this is a catcher, so you place the cup on the top, and then you can just hit it on the side, and so long as your catcher is thick enough, it should come off.
So for everybody that's just listening and not watching the audio on YouTube or Patreon, it's just like a little cup that the piece itself sits on, and then the glaze will run off onto that piece, and it has a dish to protect anything that would spill over from getting on the kiln shelf, and then he just removes that piece from his main work. And then do you just sand the bottom down?
Yeah, it's like what is it? It's a backflapping machine. It's like it's like a wheel with sandpaper on the top, and I just, after you knock it off, I put it on there for a few seconds, and then I'll spin it around, and it'll grind the bottom. And then for the faceted cups, well, I guess it's audio only, but for the faceted cups, when I spin it, because of the facets, it's going to leave a scallop shell pattern.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, what's the difference between the crystals that make the big visible growth and the ones that make mats?
I mean, matte glaze, a lot of it is like, it's a naming thing, I guess. But matte glaze is going to go matte no matter how you fire it. Mm-hmm. And a crystalline glaze isn't. There's like a lot of confusion in that, because you can have crystalline glazes that are under fired and then they'll be covered in crystals, but they're technically not matte. If you wanted to check to see if a matte glaze is a true matte glaze, you'd have to go on Stull to do it. Stull is like a chemistry map of silica and alumina for glazes, and it shows where the matte region is, the glossy region is, and all that.
Exactly, and that's available on glazy.org. So
yeah, they have
that's a free resource.
Yep, Glaze is great, and then the one they have a regular Stull map, and they also have the extended Stull map. Extended is more like, it's the updated version, you could say. It's the version where the materials are more accurately defined, so that you can have crystalline glazes basically in there.
Nice. So they're different, I guess, a little. They're different a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to ask the right questions here. I'm so sorry. Let's see. So what kind of kiln are you using to fire?
Oh, I fire mostly I have a few different kilns. I have a larger Scut kiln, I have a medium size. It's a Bailey kiln, but it's a rebranded Conart. And then the kilns I fire in most often are small GlazeTech Scut kiln with mini Genesis controllers on them. And they're by far my favorite, because I don't like to put a lot of eggs in one basket. And that way I can do a lot of testing at once, because I have 4 of them lined up. So I can have different firing schedules, I can have different applications, and I don't have to load up a large kiln and, lose an entire kiln load if something goes wrong.
Yeah, yep. I've got a little 822 with the touchscreen Scut, and it's the best. It's my best.
That's like the perfect size.
I know. I was like, this is like, when I was investing in, I was like, I'm gonna get this kiln because this is the perfect size. I will always love this kiln. And then now, if I get another one after this, it would be maybe something bigger and shallow. Just because I like to make bonsai pots, so the bigger and shallower I can get, I can get those weird forms in there.
Oh yeah, how is that? Every so often, the bonsai people try and get me to make a bonsai pot, and they take up so much space. But it seems like they kind of are very passionate, you could say, about their plans.
Yeah. Well, I made a whole podcast for this little niche bonsai pottery community. But all pottery is welcome, of course, and all artists who want to listen. But it's just a passion project. There's a long history in bonsai pots, and there's a lot of people with a lot of interest in it, and they have these higher level conversations within the community. It's just a great little community of ceramic artists, and there's a few artists that do like advanced crystalline glaze work. Pottery, Kevin Beresford, I think is his name.
Yeah, he stopped by.
He's one of the.
Yeah, and then there's Richard Kearney in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a few. We love our bonsai pots. It's a weird little niche community.
Is there like a specific size that's most, most used, I guess, or is it like how does that work? Is it by sizing? Is it by shape or?
There's kind of shape. The shallow container's kind of traditional. The best bet is to just look at like lots of different trees and pots and then kind of make an interpretation from there.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of drainage in the bottom. They're generally shallow, but they can be deep. It's kind of a fashion choice. Are you firing in oxidation or reduction?
All oxidation. You can do
Oh,
crystalline
okay.
in reduction. A lot of people will do a second firing with like an oil drip so they can reduce their
Ooh,
glaze afterwards. But you can fire in reduction and it's going to give you more feathery crystals. There are different shapes
awesome. So
basically.
cool. So it changes the shape of the crystal to fire it in reduction versus oxidation.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
I do not.
That's okay. I don't either. I'm just curious. Weird. Uh,
Yeah.
so so in oxidation, are you getting those? They're going to be the round, tighter crystals then?
I mean, you can crystal shape, a lot of it is determined by the temperature that you fire to or you hold at.
Uh-huh.
So the crystals that I have right now on mine are purple and round, but
Yeah.
there's also some lighter blue ones in there. And in order to get that, you have to hold at the exact right temperature and fire, to the correct peak temperature. If you
Hmm.
do it at a different temperature, you can get like bone shapes or squares or triangles.
Cool. What? That's so cool. So so where you're holding, so is it your peak temperature that's changing the shape of the crystal, or is it where you're holding? And then like if you held one place for a certain time and then changed and held somewhere else, could you like grow squares and then change and grow circles over the squares? Or
I would say it's
I'm
very
kind of
glaze
being
dependent.
abstract.
I mean,
Okay.
in theory, yes. So the peak temperature is what's going to determine basically the shape of the crystal. A higher peak
Mhm.
temperature is going to maybe give you, I think, more lines, and slightly below is going to be like bone shape, and below that's going to be circle. I may be wrong about that. I forget. It might be backwards.
No, it's totally okay. We can look it
Yeah.
up.
And then the temperature which you hold at is going to determine, I guess you could say, the type of crystal. If you hold at a lower temperature, you might make purple crystals or more purple crystals. If you hold at a higher temperature, you might make more blue crystals.
Mhm.
So it really depends, and all the crystalline glazes are going to do something different.
That's cool. So it's a combination of the firing schedule and then also the particular chemistry of the glaze as well.
Yeah, and glaze application too. It's everything.
Okay. So making it thicker, I presume, would give you more material to make crystal with and potentially more growth.
Actually, the opposite.
Oh,
Yeah, if
interesting.
you want to get really large crystal, well, I should say again, it depends on the glaze. All glazes are
Of
going to
course, of
behave
course.
differently. But if you want to get really large crystals with some glazes, you have to do a really thin application, and you can get
Hmm.
giant crystals. If you want to get small crystals, on the other hand, you can do a small or a really thick application. And then you can also grow crystals by how long you hold them at your hold temperature, which for most people
Hmm.
is cone 04. But there's no reason that it has to be 04. You can hold it at different temperatures. You can go up and down to make rings. There's a lot
Oh,
of
that's
different
cool.
things you can do.
Does it do different stuff at different hold temperatures then?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, that's so cool. Man, how did you figure out what kind of crystals that you like to grow in this giant world of crystals?
Just trial and error and a lot of testing in the test kiln. Originally, the cobalt glaze, the purple one that I have, it doesn't have as much pink crystals and it has more blue crystals, which is one. So what I'm shooting for is to have a nice balance with more purple and pinks than blues. But I still want to keep a
Hmm.
few of those blue crystals in there, but I don't want them to be, too large. So you just basically have to take a firing schedule and then fire at different peak temperatures, maybe 25 degrees different, and then afterwards do different hold temperatures. Same thing, 25 to 50 degrees different, and take lots of notes.
Yes. How do you
Yeah.
keep track of all these notes? Are you a notebook? Are you like
Oh,
a
I'm
digital?
anti-notebook.
Do you have an iPad? Your
I
anti-notebook?
Excel.
Okay.
No, I'm
Gotcha.
anti notebook and anti sketchbook. But that's a personal choice. That's like
I
just a
gotcha.
me
No
thing.
worries.
I If I throw it into my head, it works better for me just because my head will, my
Okay.
brain will pop out the answer that I need.
Doesn't your brain get full? Like, as a pro notebook person, I would just like to
Yeah.
say that putting it in something gets it out of my brain so I have space to move. Like,
I mean, I guess everybody's different,
for sure,
but
for
I
sure.
find that, if I have a notebook or a sketchbook, I just never actually use it.
Oh, it's too gone. It's
Yeah.
gone if you write it down.
Yeah, and then, I just find that personally for myself, it's better for me just to live in the moment, I suppose.
For sure. That's That's impressive that you can remember all of it. My brain would explode,
Oh,
especially
I don't
considering how
remember it.
many pathways there are.
I mean, I don't
Man, that's
remember it, but
awesome.
like subconsciously maybe I remember it, and then my head will
I
kind of
mean,
point me in the right
I
direction.
think you know to some extent, with repetition, because it sounds like your practice requires a ton of testing. And when you're taking all those subtle steps to test in those increments to figure out what you're looking for, you're gonna remember at least some of it
Yeah.
because you're doing so much repetition. Like, that's amazing, and that repetition is what makes masters for sure. Awesome. So, what cone normally are you around? Is it around 10 or closer to 6, or does it just depend on what you're trying to do?
Personally, I do anywhere from cone 9 to cone 11, or
Okay.
8 to 11, I should say. But
Extra.
for crystalline glazes, you can fire. I think the lowest we got to crystallize was 08, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah. Do they look good? Not quite
Right.
so much. But it's a matter of if you put the time in to develop it, I'm sure you could do something with it. But I
Interesting.
think these days most people fire at cone 6 or crystalline. You can do the glaze that I do at cone 6. You need to adjust and add some boron in to lower the peak temperature, things like that.
Yeah, I mean the chemistry. It's all up to us to figure that out. We can
Yeah.
we can get on ceramic materials workshop and take a crystal ball class if we really want to get into the gritty of it. So, are there any other ways that you can control the crystal growth or the placement of the crystals? Like, I
Crystal
saw
placement.
some mugs where you kind of, yeah, like how you kind of made designs where it looked like you controlled where they were on the design.
Yeah,
Is that just application?
you can totally do that. You mean like where I put the images in with crystals, like
Yeah.
images made
Well,
out of
I've
crystals?
seen both. Yeah, images made out of crystals, like so controlling the growth, and then I also
Mhm.
was gonna have a coming up question about putting them over images, like if those were transfers or
Yeah.
underglaze or what.
I mean, you can. There's a few different. I've been obsessing over that question for many, many years. So you
Nice.
can do it a few different ways. You can do it with application, like if you have a thin area of glaze and a thick area of glaze. A thin area may make crystals, but a thick area won't. But because of the way that a glaze moves, it's often going to, run over and erase said image. But if you were to make like a tape pattern, dip it once, remove the tape, dip it again, you could get like a grid pattern of crystals that way. You can also do it with chemistry, which is a
Mhm.
different way. Like if you have a glaze that doesn't crystallize,
Mhm.
so you take your normal crystalline glaze and you adjust it so that it doesn't crystallize, and then you make another
Okay.
glaze that's the same glaze but over crystallized. You can actually force it to seed crystals that way, because wherever you put the glaze that is over crystallized into the other glaze, it's going to crystallize there. But it's another issue of being able to control the image. It's difficult to do. So I don't
Yeah,
really
I've done.
do those too much anymore.
Oh yeah, I think
Yeah.
I've done something somewhat similar with like I've got a Timaku glaze that I have one version that doesn't really make crystals. It just kind of looks like molasses, and then I have another
Hmm.
one that makes a ton of crystals. And so I'll
Yeah.
like put the lots of crystals wherever I want them, and then let it. And it usually works, except it sinks. They
Yeah.
like to sink.
Oh, you can also put refractory in it, which will do the same thing. So if you have like
Nice.
your temoku and you put some alumina hydrate or,
Yeah.
EPK or something like that, anything that's refractory actually, you can get crystals to come out. So if you have like a tea dust temoku and you want it to get more of those little tea dust flakes, you could just
Yeah.
lightly spray it with some type of refractory.
Like just like add a little dusting of EPK on the outside, like little
Yeah,
magic dust.
yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Or you could mix some EPK in some water and splash it on with a paintbrush. It would take some
Nice.
testing, but once you get it all dialed in,
Yeah, yeah.
that's you can do it that way.
Interesting. I've never heard of that. That's really cool. I'm sure it's been around. I've just never heard of it. Thank you for that. That's awesome. So let's see. I see these effects sometimes, and in your work a lot too, where you're getting these iridescent effects with, and I don't think you're using any kind of overglaze. How are you getting those like the shimmers? Those are so
Uh,
awesome.
I mean, that just depends on the material. Some
Hmm.
materials will get an iridescent effect. It's material and chemistry. But for iridescence,
Okay.
copper is a big one. Iron can be iridescent. Cobalt can be iridescent. Molybdenum. What else?
Are these?
Mhm.
I've seen iridescence in raku glazes when I've done some raku firing, but the iridescence wasn't stable.
Oh,
So it
that's
was like an
copper
unstable
reduction.
kind of copper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is different than that, for sure, right?
Yeah, it's just a matter of chemistry and materials. And for raku, it would be having reduction. There's
Hmm,
also,
okay.
opal, luster, things like that, or mother of pearl, I guess.
Yeah, but when you guys are creating these iridescent glazes, these
Mhm.
are they're just cone six, that's one glaze, one firing, or is that something additional after a single firing to make them iridesce?
A single firing for myself at least, but other
Okay,
people will
and
do a
you're like
second
cone eight,
firing.
nine, yeah.
Yeah, you can. Oh, there's
Interesting.
also a PVD process, but that's kind of expensive. But you could make
Mm-hmm.
anything iridescent with that. It's where you put a
Interesting.
material in it's a very expensive machine. And let's say you put gold into this machine or tin, it's going to heat it up to the right temperature, vaporize the material, and deposit it onto the surface. So,
Like
uh,
electroplating, like how they make crystals look rainbow?
yes, think of it like electroplating, but very, very specialized, and you can't really do it at home. But it's if you want like crazy rainbows and you want to ship your pieces off to a place, that's another way to do it.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. I wouldn't put it past anyone. That's a cool option to have.
yeah.
So, alright, next on, we can't get away without talking about acid etching. Do you do any
Hmm.
acid etching?
Yeah, I mean, all crystalline people acid etch.
Cool. What is it?
Like
We're all wondering.
acid etching is it's a process where you use acid to dissolve a part of the glaze. Usually acid
Okay.
is going to attack certain metals more than
Mm-hmm.
others, but not iron. But you can like let's take copper as an example.
Okay.
Copper is exceptionally weak as a material.
Okay.
So if you have excess copper in a glaze, you can get the copper to be eaten out by the acid, and that's going to change. The most common one you'll see is like a blue glaze that gets etched and turns white, and then when you
Hmm.
get it wet, it'll turn blue again. That's basically acid etching. It's sodium bisulfate, which is it's like cool pH balancer. It's really safe though. It's not scary acid. You can put your hand in it. It's fine.
I think I used pH down when I used to keep discus. So you had to
Yeah,
adjust the pH for your fish tank.
yeah. I actually had. That's how I accidentally got into acid etching, which I haven't done in
Oh,
forever.
nice.
I had a little fish tank full of NT puffers, and
Oh,
I
those are
had
so
a
cute.
crystalline piece that I didn't really care for. I put it in there because I wanted a fish, a nice little fish house.
Yeah,
And it was in there for a few
fish
months.
house.
I needed to clean the fish tank, so I removed the piece. And when I took it out, it was white. It looked normal when it's in the water because you can't, tell because it's wet.
Yeah.
But once you remove it and you dry it off, it changes colors. A lot of crystalline potters will stumble upon that. Like Ian Childers, his etching origin story is with Gatorade, I believe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So I was thinking like you could make a vase and cover it with lemons.
Yeah, lemon
you know how
torch.
you cover a ham with like pineapple? Even pineapple's
Yeah,
pretty acidic.
yeah.
And, like,
You can acid etch a
fruit
lot
it
of
up.
glazes. The funny thing about cobalt though is it's very impervious to being etched. You have to actually
Oh,
weaken the glaze in order to etch it. But I don't really mess around with etching the cobalt too much.
yeah, yeah.
It's an extra step.
Yeah, you don't have to. What were you saying earlier about oils and another fire? Were you talking about lusters, or
Oh,
was there something extra that I missed?
okay. So it's called post-fire reduction, and what it is
Okay.
you'll fire. Okay, so like oxblood red glazes, how you fire them
Okay.
in a reduction kiln, and they'll be red because of the copper.
Uh-huh.
But if you fire them
Yes.
in oxidation, they're going to be blue because they
Mhm.
don't have reductions. If you had an oxidation kiln and you wanted your crystalline glaze to be red and shiny, what
Mm.
people will do is they'll fire it up to temperature, get their crystals and everything, and then usually they'll acid etch it afterwards to, make the colors pop a little bit. And for their second firing, they'll put it in a kiln that has little IV bag usually with oil or alcohol, any type of, or wood even. And
Mhm.
as the kiln goes up to temperature, they'll drip that oil or alcohol in there or throw some wood in, and it's going to make the glaze reduce. So it'll turn from blue to red. And that's
That's
the
so
way
cool. So it's
that's
like a
how,
localized reduction.
I mean, it's for the whole kiln, but that's how people,
Okay.
like Ted Seacombe, Ted Seacombe, he's also in
Mhm.
Australia. That's how people get, golds and all that.
That's cool. The
Yeah.
Australians are doing such cool stuff. They've got
Yeah.
really cool pottery, especially with the bonsai scene. They've got some really, really cool bonsai potters.
Yeah.
It's really cool over there right now, culturally. The art is going. So, can you control the color of your crystals and make them different colors from the base glaze? I mean, I know yours are blue
Mm,
because they're cobalt, but like, if you were like, could you make them any color, like with stains
Uh,
or like?
stains generally, well, to start off with, you can't make a cobalt glaze turn red. You're
Okay.
going to be limited in what the material is, but
Mhm.
you can, cobalt has purple, pink, blue, black in it. You can adjust those
Mhm.
colors. But for stains generally don't like to go in a crystalline glaze themselves. They will look very
Okay.
bad. They'll turn really rough and kind of grody. But the way that
Fair, fair.
to get around that is you can put stain in a slip, put the slip on your pot,
Okay.
biscuit, and then put a clear crystalline glaze over. And that's how you see those red and blue crystalline pots. Same
Awesome.
works
So
with any,
that's what they're
yeah.
doing. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
I was
then,
wondering how
people
they
will
get
do
those
little
back
gradients.
colors.
Yeah,
Yes, that's awesome. There's so many layers to these people's work, and it's just this process and hashing it all out. Hopefully, everyone listens to this so they
yeah.
know how
Well,
much
I
they're
mean, it's
putting
it's
into
the same
each
thing with
slip.
any, with any glaze, even with commercial glazes or, you know, regular reduction. It's just really getting familiar with the process. And it's just that I
Hmm.
happen to be familiar with crystalline. There's nothing wrong with commercial glazes or anything like that. You can make
Oh no,
incredible
for
things no
sure. I
matter
use
what you're
both.
using. Yeah,
Absolutely. Ceramics is so wide, and there are so many different things that you can do that you could make a whole like 400,000 different careers out of all these different niches that we have within this art form. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, if I could clone
So,
myself or live thousands of years, it would be
right,
great.
right, right. Well, there's a lot of different people out there doing ceramics. It's just that we're all doing our own little things out here. So it's
Yeah.
sweet. So, what kind of clay body is best for crystalline glaze work?
You can, okay, so the common wisdom used to be that you had to have like a pure white porcelain. The whiter, the better. The purer, the
Mm-hmm.
better. But that's totally not true. You can
Mm-hmm.
use stoneware. Some crystalline glazes look fantastic on stoneware. You can use probably any clay. I mean,
Hmm.
I would just say test it out. You can
Yeah,
also layer different types of clay and it'll, change how the glaze behaves. So you can use any
for
clay,
sure.
really.
I've never seen anybody, and not that say that it's not happening for
Mhm.
sure, because someone's out there that I just haven't seen yet, but I have not seen with my own eyeballs speckled clay getting crystalline on it yet.
Oh, I'm
here for
sure
it, though.
you could totally. That would be a really. That's actually on my list of things to do. But you could
I
totally do
want to
that.
see it. I'll be
Speckled
looking for
clay.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's really popular. It's clay with granular manganese thrown in. So the
Hmm.
little manganese glaze, the little manganese grains are going to form those dark spots, and
Hmm.
that would be a really fun thing to do with crystals because that's like having concentrated spot of manganese, which is that's going to do some great things with crystalline glaze. Somebody should pick that up.
That's cool.
I'm sure people
I
have done it, but somebody out there should pick it up because it's on my list.
I work in speckled clay and I make glazes not as advanced quite yet. I don't even know if I'm gonna do giant crystal growth glazes, but I do like the dusty crystal glazes.
Yeah,
I have a few of those that I make, and I like how like you're saying the manganese bits they do come through. Most of my glazes they come through as metallic spots, and sometimes they're a little more liquidy, and sometimes they're a little more precise spots. But it's just really interesting to see how they have their own additional layer of effect onto the glaze.
yeah. There's a few different variations of that too. Kurt Hammerly, he does. He's a
Mm.
great guy, really cool, very very generous with his information, and all around awesome
Mm-hmm.
person. And this is something that he says, so I don't feel bad putting it out there. He has this glaze called peach bloom, and what peach bloom glaze
Mm-hmm.
is it's a base kind of white glaze, and he'll dip it
Okay.
in the glaze, and as he dips it and pulls it out of the bucket, he throws a little bit of I think they're copper shavings or something onto it, and that's going to give it a nice local coloring. And you could do it with a lot of things. You could do it with chrome, you could do it with iron, you could do it with granular manganese. The
That's exciting.
possibilities.
I'm
Yeah.
having I'm having tin and chrome based ideas right
Yeah.
now. Like
Or if you wanted to, not have to be so rushed when you glaze, because if the glaze dries out and you throw things on it, it's not going to stick. Just
hmm
mix it with some water or some glycerin, and you could do it that
yeah,
way.
just
Glycerin
to
is an
carry it.
awesome material for people who want a cool nugget of information.
Nice. What would you say glycerin like tell me all about what it does so that everybody knows what its applications would be for.
Glycerin. Okay, so the secret ingredient to a lot of the stuff I do is water or glycerin, and the reason for that is variation in glaze. A lot of the time is based on application. So a thinner
Mm.
application is going to look different than a thicker application, especially so in crystalline. So I think it's called like water washing. Anyway,
Hmm.
so if you get some water and you sponge it around a piece, if you make little
Yeah.
dots of water and then you dip it in your glaze, those areas that you have water on won't absorb as much glaze, so it'll look different.
Nice.
Glycerin is basically going to be way more extreme. So you could water it down if you wanted to, but I just go full strength glycerin. You can splash them on, and
Mm.
wherever it goes on is going to have a lot less glaze. So it's a great way to get variation for people out there. If you want
Yeah.
to fool around with your glaze and make it look a little fancier, splash it with some water, get your hand wet, grab your bisque, and then dip it. It's gonna
That's
potentially look kind of cool.
super cool. I love that. I love getting weird with my glaze application. That's why I always like I don't dip as much. I do a little bit sometimes for some
Mhm.
production work, but I like to like brush and find other ways to make it varied. So this is
Yeah.
great. Oh, that's so cool. So you're slip casting mostly, if I've seen your feed correctly. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I switched over exclusively to slip casting because of my normal
Sweet.
job and because of everything. Throwing's hard on the body also.
Oh,
I
yes,
have,
true.
yeah, I've switched over to that, and it's a great process where the secret is I can do glaze tests in the form of cups
Mm-hmm.
and sell them to people. So I get to
Yep.
advance my knowledge of glaze, see how things turn out, and make a little bit of money off of that, which is nice. You can't exactly sell like a
Yeah,
test
no.
style.
No, for sure. And I think that's excellent. Especially it just makes sense. Especially when you're big that what your the the meat of your practice is your glaze chemistry and the genius of it all. So the having the form just behave itself makes total sense. How did you decide what forms that you were gonna have? Are the forms that you're casting forms you chose or forms that you made mothers of, or how did you pick?
Well, I do have mother molds. right behind me on the table are many, many molds. So the way that I did it is I really want people to use my pieces. I don't really want them to kind of sit on a shelf. And this is just a personal preference. I basically wanted them to be, traveler cups, easy cups that people could fit in their coffee machine, put a lid on, put in their car holder, things like that. So I actually took a milkshake mixer, measured the dimensions, 3D printed it, and made a mold from that.
Nice.
And for the faceted form, that's just the faceted version. But the reason that I put the facets in is because with crystalline glazes and a lot of other glazes, and you're going to get what they call necklacing, which is where crystals form around the edges of a piece. So if you have vertical edges, it's going to, like this, seed crystals around the edge.
Yeah. So it encourages the growth. That's perfect, because my next question was, are certain surfaces better for crystalline glazes?
Any surface is fine.
Do you have to have perfectly smooth, or?
I mean, traditional wisdom is that you need perfectly smooth pieces ideally, but you do not need any shape or surface is fine. The glaze will behave differently on rough pieces. You can have wavy shapes. It can be any shape.
Coming into this, I was like, this is going to be interesting, but I'm not going to want to be a crystal potter, but I think you're changing my mind.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about, like, what could they look like on top of heavily grogged surfaces, and, like, if you honed that in, what could it be? Like, so interesting. I might have to look into it. I got to know.
Yeah.
Wow, so cool.
And I got to
So
make
what
some
is your
bonsai pots.
I know, you should. They're a great form, and it's a great community. So, what does production look like for you?
Production for me, I've geared up my production. Let me see that over there. So what I have is I have a few bins. They're plastic bins they're about 2.5 feet wide by 3 feet long, and they have wooden slats over them with foam covering the wooden slats. They're inexpensive lift drain tables.
I gotcha.
And I have a lot of molds, so what I'll do is I'll pour all my molds in a couple days, and I will make all my pieces that way, and I'll put them in a damp closet until I can finish the rim. There's a plaster shortage at the moment, so I don't have any more plaster to make more molds until March, possibly. But I can potentially make about 100 to 150 pieces a day if I really, push for it.
It would kick my butt if I had to. I mean, I know people throw that much a day, but it hurts to think about.
Yeah, it does. But that's what I'm gearing up towards is, something more like that.
That's awesome. And so are you making your glazes in big batches, or are you making basically like a little testy test, and then you make like 10 cups and then that glaze is gone?
Let me bring something over. I actually do it a couple different ways. Often what I do is I'll make a tool to fit the specific use that I need for it. So, sorry, I'm just grabbing an example to show you.
You're all good. This one's going to have a lot of value for everybody who watches on the YouTube. It's Blue Nose Trading. You can find it on the Bonsai Pot-cast playlist.
Yeah. All right. So this is a special tile that I developed. It's the same size as my, my pieces. So one side is round.
Nice. So it tells you basically exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah, and the other side is faceted, and it has a built-in texture.
Oh my gosh.
But the fun part is, this is my test palette dip system. So it only takes up to that line 100 grams of glaze. So what I do is I put this in here.
Did you 3D print this?
Yep. So, there's
cool.
a very, very small gap between the walls and the piece itself. And all I do is I fill this with 100 grams of glaze. I dip this in 1, 2, 3 seconds. I pull it out, and it's incredibly efficient. So I do a lot of glaze testing, but I don't actually use nearly as many materials as people would imagine. So that's
awesome.
if people want to see it, here it is.
Yes, this is genius. You're gonna have to sell these. You're not gonna have time to make pots anymore because you're gonna be selling these tactile dip kits to potters all over the world, man. That's
Yeah,
so
people.
cool.
eh, I mean, they're really pretty great. That's something I'm
That's
proud of. That
awesome.
little dip system.
Yeah, you should be. That's amazing. That's just
Yeah,
one stroke of genius that I'm sure is of many that you'll have.
yeah.
So, what's it like to get ceramic supplies in Hawaii?
Oh, it's the worst. It's
I
pretty
bet.
horrible. Because of COVID, we had a large resurgence of ceramic studios, and we have a
Hmm.
new local supplier, Hawaii Ceramic Supply. They are
Oh,
the
okay.
best if you're in Hawaii. Like big props to them. They are great people,
Nice.
and they just started out, but they really are growing. And they're very professional. So
Oh, good.
prior to COVID, we had a couple local suppliers, and they actually closed down for
Mm.
family reasons and all that. So we had zero local suppliers for quite a few years, which is
Ouch.
kind of
So
tough.
you had to do
Yeah.
everything online or like.
Oh yeah, I would, because shipping is so expensive to Hawaii. It's not shipping, it's freight. So you have to get it by
Yeah.
the container or by the pallet. And because of that, yeah, it's really expensive. And I try and, whenever possible, order in a larger amount,
Hmm.
because if I do that, then it's going to be a little bit less expensive.
Yeah.
And material costs only go up. So everything
That
has
that
to come in by
stinks.
boat.
Is it getting a little bit? I guess it's not much better since you have the suppliers. Like, are they at least able to network larger amounts on freight so that you can pay a little bit less as the end buyer
Oh yeah,
now that you
they
have a
are
store?
they're great.
Good.
I mean, it's probably going to be a little bit less getting them to do it than doing the freight by myself, but it's a lot of it is a matter of convenience.
That too.
Ordering
You
and
don't have to think
placing,
about it anymore.
yeah, placing an order with Laguna. Laguna's great, but sometimes it's not the most fun to, you know, get everything squared away just right. With my
Mm-hmm.
local supplier, I can explain to them, okay, I need this, and this is exactly what I need. They'll talk to, email, contact, stay on the phone with whoever they need to find the material, and then when they do, they'll send me a DM and tell me the price and this and that. And I do love my local supplier. For I do sometimes order online when I need to. Big fan of Clay King. Clay King is
Me too.
awesome. They're great people.
Yeah. Oh, we love Clay King. So, do you ship internationally then? I've heard it's easy to get stuff out of Hawaii. It's just hard to get it
I
in.
used to ship internationally, but a lot. So I like to do click it and ship it on the USPS
Mhm.
site, or
Yeah.
I do my stuff through Shopify. And
Mhm.
you're supposed to be able to do everything, in store, print it out, and it is relatively easy. But sometimes things just don't work out with the shipping addresses, and it's very difficult to do. So I'll have to go down to the post office and, manually fill something in. So I no longer do international. I do just USA only. Unless if I do know the people and they contact me on the side, I'll do it.
Yeah, I
But
mean
I
that's
try and
fair.
avoid it. Yeah.
That's fair. I only do international through Etsy now because they kind of like cover your back on a lot of different stuff. So
Yeah.
I just like only through that now.
Yeah. And then international, sometimes what I do is the shipping is so expensive. So
Hmm.
I feel kind of bad about that. So sometimes
It's
what I'll
not
do
your
is I'll
fault.
throw in like a little extra for people, and that makes everybody happy.
I guess
Yeah.
that's fair. You just throw in a test tile. That's fun. You don't need them.
Yeah. Yeah. People,
They'd
I
be like,
mean, people are
"Wow, a
happy. It's always
paperweight."
great. Yeah.
No, that's great. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on the end here. Did you have any questions for me before I let you do your Instagrams?
Oh, I do
You
have to
don't.
do I do have to do my Instagram stuff today. Questions for you. If I were to make a bonsai pot, because I do make molds, what
Mhm.
is the ideal height and diameter? Like if you were to have like a middle ground bonsai pot that would please as many
I
people as possible.
I would find something that's going to be shohin size. So I'm a little rough on what those exactly are, but I would say something between 8 to 12 inches. And honestly, if you're going to be slip casting, make ovals. Like, make a
Oval.
shohin oval.
All right.
Yes, ovals. Because as someone who throws on the wheel, they're so stinking hard to hand build and throw because there's a lot of points of failure. But if ovals could be slip cast, and someone with that, slip casting process was making them, I think they would be more cost effective, and people want ovals. I just hate making them because they're so I have such a high failure rate that it's just so difficult to throw and hand build them all together and make it effective for my time.
Do you usually
ovals,
like throw the rim, cut it off, and put it on a slab?
Yeah,
that type
on
of,
a slab. Yeah. But then you have to refine it and put the holes in, flip it over, shape it, and somehow not mess it up the whole time. And then it has to dry for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then it has to take up a whole kiln shelf all by itself.
That's why I'm always hesitant about bonsai pots. It's all about like kiln space for me. I can fit a lot more cups in one bonsai, pot.
I just
space
put a whole kiln full of cups. I make the cups too, so I definitely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
The bonsai pots are just kind of a really fun thing to make, but I would, if you're looking for a shape to cast, I would look at some traditional old school Japanese pots, and just those kind of styles are a great place to start. And then you can get spicy. How
about like wall thickness? I've noticed that the pots are pretty thick. Is that just is there a reason for that, or is it just...
It seems like a matter of opinion. Some are thinner, and people say, "Oh, wow, that's so well made because it's thin and delicate." And then some are thicker, and people say, "Wow, that's really sturdy and it's not going to break because it's so thick." But then the people on the thin side are like, "Oh, well, that's heavy," and the people on the thick side are like, "Oh, well, that's going to break." So really, you just got to kind of find that medium between, like, if it's a huge pot, like, you're going to want it to be a little bit thicker than if it was something super tiny, because it is something that's going to be handled. It's going to have something big and heavy in it, and it's going to be moved around from bench to bench while you're working on this tree, and it's going to have wire tied through it to hold the tree in. So, you don't want it to be like 1/8 of an inch or super thin or anything. I don't know what
I like having thin pieces. There's something elegant about a thin, light cup, but I can understand, if you want to have your precious miniature tree in there.
You just don't want it to break.
Yeah. How about, oh shoot, I know one. Okay, sometimes I'll see like a bonsai pot with, the pot, and then it'll have like a little plate catcher. What's the preferred setup for that? Is the catcher something that's more...
Some people like them, some people don't. I've never used the catch trays. I think it's a design kind of choice, because in most situations, your bonsai trees most of the time are going to actually live outside.
Yeah.
And a lot of times catch trays are for when you have an indoor situation to keep things from being a mess. So I've always seen the catch tray as kind of like not necessary in a bonsai pot, but not necessary doesn't mean that it's not allowed. And if you think that looks super cool to have a tray with it, then you could totally sell pots with trays included.
Well, I mean, that's one more mold I have to make, so I'm going to be in the
you
no
don't
tray
need it.
camp. Yeah. I don't need more steps.
Fair. Yeah, you don't need it. No. Yeah, your glazes would look sweet on some bonsai pots for sure.
Yeah, I should.
And
maybe that'll be on my
a whole new
2024
bonsai potter.
Yeah,
I mean,
every
you
so
can always
often,
just make a few.
It's guaranteed about every I think every 4 months, like clockwork, one of you people is gonna send me a DM and say, "You have a bonsai pot? I want your glaze, your crystalline glaze on a bonsai pot." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I don't currently do that." And I'll tell them, "Yeah, next year." And it's been next year for a few years.
Well,
but maybe
if you
2024.
had a form, if you just had a form and you made up, a sample, you could be like, "Here's my shape. Pick a glaze." And just, be like that. Or however you want to set it up. That's just how I kind of envision it.
Yeah. People will get what they get. I find that dealing with customs is always, it's more to deal with.
I don't really enjoy it, so I try to just say no more often than not. But I respect everybody that likes it and does it, and I try to connect those people with people who want to do it, and while respectfully declining myself.
Yeah, customs are more for like friends, basically. Friends will get their images put in a glaze.
Nice. Can you paint my dog?
Yeah, actually, I am putting. That's the most common request for images in a glaze is putting people's dogs in it. So
knew
yeah,
it.
pictures of dogs.
Awesome. Well, where can everybody find you and your work and buy it and support you?
All of my stuff is currently, it's a New Year's resolution for me in 2024 to improve the website and everything, but through my Instagram, Cone Infinity, and the website is coneinfinity.com. But it's a Shopify site, so it needs to have some things added to make it more, information centric, like a bio and gallery. But yeah, basically Instagram.
Nice. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and share your wealth of knowledge on crystalline glazes, because I know that we're all super curious inside and you guys are like a secret society.
Yeah, they are a wild bunch for sure. This was great fun. First time being on a podcast, and it was a great one.
Awesome. Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by Blue Nose Trading, which is me and all of my patrons. You can get early access to unreleased podcast episodes and YouTube videos by becoming a patron of my work at patreon.com/bluenosetrading. You can find all of my current available ceramic work on my website, bluenosetrading.com. For social media links and information about today's artist, be sure to check out the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Remember that you have great ideas that are worth exploring, drink lots of water, and I will see y'all next time around.